The rain and the rest. The rain fell in relentless sheets, a gray curtain that blurred the world outside the diner's fogged-up windows. Inside Rosie's diner, the air was thick with the comforting sense of sizzling bacon, fresh coffee, and warm bread. The clatter of plates and the hum of conversation filled the space, a cozy refuge from the storm. Customers sat in booths, their laughter mingling with the steady rhythm of the rain, creating a symphony of warmth and life. Chantel Williams, a young waitress with warm brown eyes and a smile that could light up the gloomiest day, weaved through the tables with practiced ease. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her apron was slightly wrinkled from a long shift. At 23, she'd been working at Rosie's for 2 years, and though the tips were modest and the hours stretched late into the night, she loved the job. It wasn't just about serving food, it was about the people. She thrived on the small connections. The regulars who knew her name, the shy kids who grinned when she slipped them an extra cookie, the weary travelers who left with a lighter heart after a kind word. Chantel believed in hard work and kindness, values her grandmother had instilled in her before she passed away. Tonight, though, something felt different. As she balanced a tray of steaming plates, her gaze drifted to the glass door at the front of the diner. Through the misted glass, she saw a figure huddled on the sidewalk, barely visible in the downpour. It was a boy, no older than 13, thin and shivering. His oversized jacket clung to his frame, soaked through, and his messy brown hair was plastered to his forehead. He sat with his knees drawn up, arms wrapped tightly around them, as if to shield himself from the cold. His eyes, wide and hollow, stared through the glass at the plates of food being served inside. There was a quiet hunger in his gaze, not just for food, but for something deeper, something Chantel recognized instinctively. Her heart twisted. She'd seen people down on their luck before. Rosie's was near a busy intersection, and the city had its share of struggles. But this boy was different. He wasn't begging or asking for help. He just sat there, alone in the rain, as if the world had forgotten him. Chantel glanced around the diner. Her boss, Mr. Gray, was a stern man with a no-nonsense attitude. His rules were clear. No free food, no exceptions. The diner wasn't a charity, he'd say, and Chantel needed this job. She was saving up for community college, hoping to study nursing someday. But as she looked back at the boy, her resolve hardened. Rules or no rules, she couldn't let him sit there, starving and soaked. She made her way to the kitchen, her mind racing. The cook, Javier, gave her a curious look as she grabbed a small plate and started piling it with leftovers. A slice of warm cornbread, a bowl of vegetable soup, and a handful of crispy fries. She dug into her apron pocket, pulling out the crumpled bills she'd earned in tips that night. It wasn't much, $10 maybe, but it was enough to cover the cost. She paid for the meal at the register, ignoring the raised eyebrow from Sarah, the cashier. Stepping outside, the cold rain stung her skin. The boy flinched as she approached, his eyes wary. Up close, she saw how young he really was. His face pale and gaunt, his hands trembling from the cold. "Hi there," Chantel said softly, kneeling to his level. "You hungry?" He nodded quickly, his eyes darting to the plate. He didn't speak, but the gratitude in his expression was unmistakable. "I'm Chantel," she said, offering a gentle smile. "What's your name?" "Lucas," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Lucas, you can eat here. Take your time." She handed him the plate, and he hesitated, as if waiting for a catch. Then, slowly, he took it, his thin fingers clutching the edges. Chantel pulled her jacket over her head to shield them both from the rain, watching as he took his first bite. He ate carefully, savoring each morsel as if it might be his last. Her chest tightened at the sight. How long had it been since he'd had a proper meal? They sat in silence for a while, the rain drumming around them. Chantel didn't press him to talk. She knew better than to push someone who looked like they'd been through too much already. When he finished, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked up at her. His eyes were still guarded, but there was a flicker of warmth in them now. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I didn't think anyone would help me." Chantel smiled, her heart swelling. "No one should go hungry, Lucas. You don't have to thank me." He nodded, but the silence that followed was heavy. She could tell he wasn't ready to share more, and that was okay. "You're welcome back any time," she said as she stood. "If you need food or just a place to warm up, come inside. No questions asked." Lucas gave her a small, hesitant smile. his first since they'd met. It was fleeting, but it carried a spark of hope. He stood, dusted off his worn jacket, and disappeared into the rainy night. Chantel watched him go, a strange mix of relief and worry settling in her chest. Who was this boy, and what had brought him to this point? Over the next few days, Chantel couldn't stop thinking about Lucas. She kept an eye out for him, hoping he'd return. The diner was as busy as ever, with the usual crowd of truckers, families, and late-night stragglers. But every time the bell above the door jingled, her heart skipped, expecting to see the boy's thin frame. A week later, he came back. It was late afternoon, and the lunch rush had just died down. The diner was quieter now, the air filled with the soft clink of dishes and the murmur of a few lingering customers. Chantel was wiping down the counter when she saw him slip inside, his jacket still damp from the drizzle outside. He looked a little less guarded this time, though his eyes still carried that quiet sadness. "Hey, Lucas," she said warmly, setting down her rag. "Good to see you. Want some cocoa?" He nodded, sliding into a booth by the window. She brought him a steaming mug, and he wrapped his hands around it, soaking in the warmth. As she watched him, she noticed the way his shoulders relaxed, just a little. He trusted her, even if only a bit. That evening, something unexpected happened. The diner's owner, Mr. Edward Martin, walked in. He was a rare sight at Rosie's, a tall man in his late 50s with graying hair and a reserved demeanor. He owned several restaurants across the city, but preferred to stay behind the scenes, leaving day-to-day operations to managers like Mr. Gray. Chantel had only spoken to him a handful of times, usually brief exchanges about schedules or supplies. Today, though, Mr. Martin seemed different. His eyes scanned the diner with a quiet intensity, as if searching for something. When he spotted Chantel, he made a beeline for her. "Chantel," he said, his voice low but firm, "I need to speak with you after your shift." Her stomach nodded. And Mr. Gray told him about the food she'd given Lucas? Was she in trouble? She nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, Mr. Martin. I'll meet you then." The rest of her shift felt endless. Her mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. By the time the last customer left and the diner quieted, her nerves were frayed. She found Mr. Martin in the small back office, a cramped room that smelled of old paper and stale coffee. He sat behind the desk, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. "Sit down, Chantel," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Is everything okay, sir?" He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "Have you seen a boy around here, about 12 or 13, dark hair, wearing old clothes?" Chantel's heart leapt. He was talking about Lucas. "Yes," she said cautiously. "His name's Lucas. He's been coming around the diner." Mr. Martin's face softened, but there was a tension in his jaw. "I've heard reports of a boy matching that description at some of my other restaurants. I need to know more about him." Chantel frowned, confused. "Why, sir?" He took a deep breath, his gaze drifting to the window. "Many years ago, I lost my son Christopher. He was about Lucas's age when he disappeared. My wife, she passed away, and things fell apart. I've been searching for him ever since." Chantel's breath caught. Could Lucas be his son? The thought seemed too wild to be true, but the look in Mr. Martin's eyes, raw, hopeful, and haunted, made her believe it might be possible. "I don't know if Lucas is my son," Mr. Martin continued, his voice quieter now. "But there's something about him. I need your help, Chantel. Keep an eye on him. Let me know if he comes back." She nodded, her mind reeling. "I will, sir. I'll watch out for him." As she left the office, her thoughts were a whirlwind. Lucas, the quiet boy with the hollow eyes, might be the missing piece of Mr. Martin's life. But how could she help without pushing Lucas too far? He was so guarded, so fragile. She didn't want to scare him away. Over the next week, Lucas became a regular at Rosie's. He'd slip in during quieter hours, always sitting in the same booth by the window. Chantel made sure he had something to eat, even if it meant dipping into her own tips again. Each time he thanked her quietly, his trust in her growing. She began to notice small things about him. The way he'd trace the rim of his mug when he was nervous. The way his eyes lit up when she told him a funny story about a customer. He was starting to open up, but only in fragments. One afternoon as the diner hummed with its usual rhythm, Lucas lingered longer than usual. He was reading a tattered paperback he'd pulled from his backpack, a science fiction novel with a worn cover. Chantel saw her chance to connect. "Good book?" she asked, sliding into the booth across from him. He looked up, startled, then nodded. Yeah, it's about this kid who finds a spaceship. He gets to go anywhere he wants, but he's still lonely. Chantel smiled, sensing an opening. Sounds like he's searching for something. You ever feel like that, Lucas? Like you're looking for a place to belong? He hesitated, his fingers tightening around the book. All the time, he said softly. I've been moving around forever. Foster homes, shelters. I don't even remember what it's like to stay in one place. Her heart ached for him. That's tough. But you're here now, and that's a start. You don't have to figure it all out alone. He looked at her, his eyes searching. Why do you care so much? Most people don't. Because I know what it's like to feel lost, she said honestly. My grandma raised me, and when she passed, I had to figure things out on my own. But I learned that kindness can make a difference, even if it's just a little. Lucas nodded, his expression softening. For the first time, he seemed to truly believe her. I've always wondered if I had a family out there, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Someone who might be looking for me. Chantel's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Lucas, there's someone who might be looking for you. Mr. Martin, the man who owns this diner, he lost his son years ago. He thinks you might be him. Lucas froze, his eyes wide with shock. What? I'm not sure, she said quickly, but he's been searching for his son, Christopher, for a long time. There's something about you that reminds him of him. Lucas didn't speak for a long moment. His hands trembled, and he stared at the table, as if trying to process the impossible. I don't know what to say, he finally whispered. You don't have to say anything, Chantel said gently. Just think about it. I'll be here. No, Matt. The next few days were a blur for Lucas. He came to the diner less often, as if grappling with the weight of Chantel's words. When he did show up, he was quieter, his eyes distant. Chantel gave him space, but she couldn't help worrying. What if he ran away? What if the truth was too much for him? One evening, as the rain started again, Lucas returned. He looked nervous, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. Chantel was wiping down the counter when she saw him hesitate at the door. She waved him in, a smile warm and reassuring. Hey, Lucas, come get warm. He sat at his usual booth and she brought him a hot cocoa. As he sipped it, she noticed Mr. Martin in the corner, watching from a distance. His eyes were fixed on Lucas, a mix of hope and fear in his expression. Chantel felt the weight of the moment. This was more than just a meal. It was a crossroads. After a while, Lucas looked up at her. Chantel, do you think it's possible? And he's really my dad? I don't know, she said honestly, but I think you both deserve to find out. Lucas nodded slowly, his gaze drifting to Mr. Martin. For the first time, he didn't look away when their eyes met. Chantel took a deep breath and made a decision. Lucas, why don't you talk to him? I'll be right here. He hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, he stood and walked over to Mr. Martin's table. The older man looked up, his expression unreadable but soft. Hey there, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm glad you came back. Lucas sat, his hands fidgeting. Chantel said you might be looking for someone. Mr. Martin nodded, his eyes never leaving Lucas. I've been looking for my son for a long time. I don't know if you're him, but I'd like to find out, if you're okay with that. Lucas didn't answer right away. The diner seemed to fade away, the clatter of dishes and the hum of voices replaced by a heavy silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't remember much about my family, but I'd like to know. Chantel watched from the counter, her heart pounding. She didn't know what would happen next, whether Lucas was truly Christopher, or if this was just a moment of hope in a long, painful search. But as she saw the two of them talking, tentative and careful, she felt a spark of something powerful. It was the beginning of something new, something that could change both their lives. The days that followed were filled with cautious steps. Mr. Martin arranged for a DNA test, and Chantel continued to check in on Lucas, making sure he had food and a warm place to stay. The diner became a safe haven for him, a place where he could let his guard down, even just a little. He started helping out around Rosie's, wiping down tables or sweeping the floor, as if trying to earn his place. Chantel watched him grow more confident, his smiles a little brighter each day. She didn't know if he was Mr. Martin's son, but she knew one thing for sure. Her small act of kindness had set something in motion. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about family, hope, and the chance to start over. As the rain cleared and the city bloomed with the first signs of spring, Chantel felt a quiet certainty. Whatever the truth was, Lucas was no longer alone, and neither was she.